In the annals of crime, few names evoke as much terror and fascination as the Boston Strangler. This unfathomable figure cast a pall of fear over Boston from 1962 to 1964, becoming a chilling chapter in the city's history and a staple in true crime folklore. The Strangler's reign of terror was marked by victims of diverse ages, all women spanning from their 20s to their 60s. Each incident intensified the city's climate of fear, turning Boston into a city on edge. The Strangler's identity remained shrouded in mystery, an enigma that only deepened the intrigue and dread. This unidentified perpetrator, who so deftly eluded law enforcement and left a trail of unanswered questions, became a symbol of the faceless evil that can lurk even in the most unassuming places. Who was this elusive figure who held a city in the grip of fear? Let's delve into the shadows of the past. In the summer of 1962, Boston was a city on edge. The reason for this growing anxiety was a shadowy figure who would later become known as the Boston Strangler. His reign of terror began in June of that year with his first known victim, a 55-year-old woman found lifeless in her apartment. She had been strangled with her own nylon stockings, a brutal method that would become a signature of this relentless killer. As weeks turned into months, the Strangler continued his horrific spree. Each victim was found in her home, strangled with her own clothing, and left in a shocking and degrading state. The ages of the victims varied widely, from 19 to 85, making it even more difficult for the police to identify a pattern and predict the Strangler's next move. In an era before modern forensic science, the police were baffled. They had no fingerprints, no DNA, and no reliable eyewitnesses. The Strangler was as elusive as he was brutal, slipping into homes undetected and leaving behind a city paralyzed by fear. As the body count rose, the fear in Boston grew almost palpable. The media coverage was relentless, with newspapers and television stations feeding the city's growing panic with each new report of another victim. Women began changing their routines, locking their doors, and living in fear of the faceless predator who seemed to strike at will. The pressure on law enforcement was immense. The police were criticized for their inability to catch the Strangler, and the public's faith in their ability to protect the city was shaken. The Strangler had not only killed 13 women, he had also struck a blow at the heart of Boston's sense of security and community. The reign of the Boston Strangler was a dark period in the city's history, a time of fear and uncertainty that would leave a lasting impact on its residents. The city was in the grip of a ruthless predator, and as the body count rose, so did the pressure on law enforcement to catch this ruthless predator. The hunt for the Boston Strangler was one of the most extensive in the city's history. The city was gripped by fear, and the police were under immense pressure to solve the case. The investigation was marked by numerous challenges and controversies that would later become integral talking points in the annals of crime history. Law enforcement faced an uphill battle from the start. The Strangler's victims were diverse, spanning different ages and backgrounds, making it difficult to establish a clear modus operandi. The lack of consistent physical evidence further complicated the situation. In most cases, there were no signs of forced entry, and the victims appeared to have let the Strangler into their homes voluntarily. This lack of a clear trail led to the reliance on a relatively new field of investigation: psychological profiling. Psychological profiling was still in its infancy during the 60s, and its use in the Boston Strangler case was a subject of much debate. Critics argued that it was an unproven science, too subjective to be reliable. They claimed that relying on this method allowed the real killer to remain at large while innocent suspects were pursued. Despite the controversy, the police maintained that psychological profiling was their best tool to get inside the mind of the Strangler. The handling of the case drew a lot of criticism. Many felt that law enforcement was too slow to connect the dots between the murders, allowing the Strangler to continue his reign of terror. There were also accusations of tunnel vision, with critics claiming that the police were too focused on their profile of the killer, overlooking other potential leads. This criticism, coupled with the challenges of the investigation, cast a long shadow over the Boston Police Department. It was a case that tested their mettle, pushed the boundaries of traditional investigative methods, and left a lasting impact on the field of criminal investigation. Despite their best efforts, the identity of the Boston Strangler remained a mystery, a phantom lurking in the city's dark corners. The investigation had turned up more questions than answers, leaving the city and the nation to grapple with the chilling reality of the Strangler's crimes. In 1964, the reign of the Boston Strangler seemed to come to an abrupt end. The sudden halt was tied to the arrest of a man named Albert DeSalvo. DeSalvo was not originally apprehended for the Strangler's crimes, but for a series of sexual assaults for which he was dubbed the Green Man. During his time in custody, he made a shocking confession, claiming that he was the infamous Boston Strangler. DeSalvo's detailed accounts of the crimes were chillingly accurate, painting a grisly portrait of the Strangler's reign. He could describe the victims, their homes, and the way they were murdered with an uncanny precision. It seemed as though the police had their man. But was everything as it seemed? Despite his detailed confession, there was a glaring absence of physical evidence linking DeSalvo to the crimes. No fingerprints, no DNA, no tangible proof. This lack of concrete evidence led many to question the validity of his confession. Some suggested DeSalvo was an attention seeker, a man desperate for infamy who saw the Strangler's crimes as his ticket to notoriety. Others proposed that he was a scapegoat, a convenient solution to a crime spree that had left the city on edge. The debate over DeSalvo's guilt continues to this day. In 2013, DNA evidence linked DeSalvo to the murder of one of the Strangler's victims, Mary Sullivan. Yet this single piece of evidence doesn't definitively prove that DeSalvo was responsible for all the Strangler's crimes. The truth may never be fully uncovered. The case of the Boston Strangler has become a complex tapestry of confessions, contradictions, and controversies. It's a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the heart of a city and the mysteries that can remain unsolved. Whether Albert DeSalvo was truly the Boston Strangler or simply a man desperate for infamy, the legacy of the Strangler continues to haunt the city of Boston.